Thanks so much, Simon, for joining us. I wish the circumstances would be slightly more upbeat. Just before we sort of start with the announcement, could you sort of give us a little bit of background as to how you got involved with Dale and your transactions to date in terms of sort of control and chairman of the club and so on?
Yeah, I got involved after more turmoil at the club in June 2021, where a couple of previous directors were removed by shareholders, and as a season ticket holder, and kind of got dragged into the club at that point. I'm not sure I got involved if I'd known all the facts, but that's my fault probably, as with the other directors that joined me at that time. But it was a difficult time then, and it became more difficult because we've just coming out of COVID, just been relegated from League One, and then without those challenges alone, which was struggle enough, we then faced a hostile takeover from a faceless payroll company that took up the next year and a half of fighting to get out of that situation, and that would never have succeeded because they'd never have passed any of the FL tests. But no, it's been a tough 3 years since then, and this is a culmination of it really. That ever since I've been involved, we've been on a downward trajectory where we started off with League One costs and reducing revenue, and we've been chasing our tail on that front ever since, until this season where we've kind of got ourselves now to a more stabilised position. But even that stabilised position is a big loss without a cup run or player trading.
Right. Okay. So National League, as we know, you've got parachute payments from the EFL, but they're not going to last very long. So as far as the announcement that was concerned, I think it took a few Dale fans by surprise. Could you sort of explain what the purpose of the meeting and the proposals are, and the rationale behind it?
So we've been trying to sell the club for the last 15 months. Rochdale's got a pretty unique share structure in that there isn't a beneficial owner, there isn't one majority owner. It's owned by the supporters, which is fantastic. In an ideal world, that's a model I'd love to be able to make work. But unfortunately, the way football is in this country, it's very difficult to run on a sustainable model, and you need cash to be able to run the business. And although the supporters are absolutely fantastic at the club and do what they can to raise money, it just doesn't touch the sides of the kind of initial money that you need just to get the club and get some additional revenue, big revenue sources into the club, like a stand development or a training ground or something along these lines. So we've been trying to sell the club for the 14 months. The issues that we have is that you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find decent investors. So many time wasters out there that you just spend forever and get talking to and get nowhere. The good investors that we do come along, we then hit problems in that the American market for buying football clubs is very strong at the moment, for example, and they just don't understand the fact that you have to do, I don't know, our club probably 30 transactions to be able to get to a majority stake, and none of that money will go into the club. They want to get to about 90%, but that's impossible to do under our current share structure. You just wouldn't be able to get there. And they want a plan for the club going forward as well, where it becomes cash rich, and the debt is a plan for the debt, and one or two other problems. They want all those issues sorted. So there's all these barriers to investment at the moment. So the announcement yesterday for an EGM is to try and radically change the share structure of the football club. So we create a new class of shares that allows us to drop the nominal value of those shares to be able to create enough shares for somebody to come in and purchase the club, where all the money, we're asking for £2 million. So all the money goes into the football club, it's cash into the football club, and they end up with a 90% ownership of the club at that point.
Right. So as a result of that, if I owned 1% of Rochdale historically, it would now be something like 0.01% of Rochdale, which would allow the club to issue the shares to new owners, which would allow them to go to this 90% threshold. Is that my correct understanding?
That's correct. So for the shareholders, including the directors that spent £500,000 getting out of the Morton House hostile takeover mess, that money's in effect written off. So it's a big hit for supporters. It's a big hit for directors. It's a hit for everybody. But at the end of the day, if we do this, we've got a chance of having a football club at the end of it. If we don't do this, the reality is that we won't have a football club at the end of this.
Right, and presumably that's because the current level of losses, in your view, are not sustainable, and
the losses
the board
are sustainable, but we have no cash and no way of raising cash. So you need cash to run the business. We're not a basket case. The losses by National League standards are pretty small. The debt by National League standards or even EFL standards is really small. We own our own ground. It's probably worth somewhere between 4 to 6 million. We're getting a valuation done at that at the moment, but it's not a basket case. It's a very good investment. But under the fan-owned model, we do not have the cash to run the club. So we've got to find a way of solving that problem. And this new share structure, although it's not probably in an ideal world what everybody would want, it is a lifeline for the club to attract investment. And I'm talking to people at the moment that will move forward when we get this, or say they'll move forward when we get this structure in place. So it's not a lost cause, but it's something we need to do, and it's up to shareholders if that's what they want.
Right. And sort of, we've seen some M&A deals be very successful in terms of takeovers, others not so. I guess what shareholders and fans would be concerned about is, if we do have new owners, is there some form of protection? What happens if you mentioned that the real estate assets, the property assets, are worth 4 to 6 million? Well, if somebody comes in, acquires 90% of the club for 2 million, what's to stop them doing a Steve Dale or something similar?
Unfortunately, that's the risk of going down this route. But if you look at the club at the minute with no cash, owning an asset that we can't get a mortgage on that asset, which would be our ideal solution here. The asset is the only thing that we've got of value at the moment to trade on. So all I can do is, and I think we found a possible investor now that's as trustworthy as any investor can be. Has got a track record in the industry. Then they've got an online presence, which a lot of these investors don't, which set the alarm bells ringing straight away. So all we can try and do is be as transparent about that investor and hope it works out in that respect. But also within the football club, and this is where you've got to be realistic, the only way to get the club to a long-term sustainable level is to develop that asset as well. We're quite lucky at the football club, in two sides of the ground you can develop. So if we could get a look at other clubs, if there was a hotel behind the main stand, if there was conferencing facilities behind the main stand, if there was an NHS medical centre that you could lease out behind the main stand, these are all the ideas that investors have, that if they can develop that, it brings in the additional income that then means you can grow the football club. Because as a standalone entity, the football club can't stand on its own 2 feet. You do need an additional income stream.
Yep, yeah, and we've said this on the show, on the podcast, on many occasions. What other business do you know is open 25, 30 days a year and is paying out bills 365 days a year? So it is a precarious model, especially when the running costs, because it's a talent-based industry, are so high. Look, we at the podcast, we want there to be a Rochdale. I can remember my first trip to Rochdale was 1980, 1981. I just come to Manchester at university. Dale used to play on a Friday night, so I'd go along. I remember seeing one of the matches there. If anybody is interested in the club, and we do have a pretty diverse and wide audience, how would they get in contact with yourself or Rochdale? Is there a contact?
Yeah, if they get in touch,
how would you advise them?
If they get in touch with myself, I'm sure you'd be happy for you to pass any details on, Kieran, and we've got all the information that they require to make decisions on investment in there. But we are working to a tight timeline. So if they want to come and have a 6-month due diligence process and that's their time frame, then it's wasting everybody's time. This needs to be sorted quickly now. And actually, in the last 12 hours since we put the statement out, we've had 2 or 3 more new inquiries. So it's not all negative. I'm fairly confident as you can be that there is a solution here, but it needs the local council, it needs shareholders, it needs an investor, all to come together and everything to line up for it to happen.
Right, absolutely. And what I would say, again, from my observations, the last time that Rochdale fans had suspicions, and that was certainly raised in respect of Morton House, the fans did an awful lot of their homework. So if anybody's thinking, well, I can bypass owners and directors rule, don't try and put it past the Dale fans. That they'll have you on toast.
No, and that's one of the first.
No wrong ones need apply.
No, that's one of the first things we try and say to investors is, if you're not in this for the right reasons, your life will be rightly hell. You've got to be in it for the right reasons and do the right things, and that's the first conversation we have with everybody. Unfortunately, quite a few ignore that and then move on to the next stage. But in an ideal world, the ideal investor that we'll have a big online presence, a company, not be hiding behind any structure or anything like that, and be open and transparent with fans. And if they do that, they'll be welcomed at Rochdale. And I think for pound, it's one of the best investments in football at the minute. It's relatively little debt. There's a plan for what debt we have. We own our own asset, the football ground. There's not many clubs that do that. We're not massively loss making. So all the ingredients are there to come and buy the club for £2 million and be able to move it forward. It is a good investment, and that is attracting interest.
Great. Well, thanks so very much. I know I've grabbed you at short notice. We all want all clubs to survive. I've got a vested interest. One of my best mates, the Prowler, the legendary Prowler, who is a Rochdale fan, who I've shared tours with on cricket, and one of the great characters of Northwest cricket. For him as well, I'm absolutely rooting for you. So good luck in this.
All right, thank you very much.